Look at that. Quiet anticipation. I hope you've all been thinking of questions to ask, because otherwise it all falls on me. And you really don't want me asking the panel questions, trust me. So anyway, our esteemed panel is here. Hopefully you'll have seen at least some of them during the course of today. So Mark Bauer on the end from the Bauer Foundation, with his colleague Stuart. Major Pat Burgess, our mindfulness expert, so he tells me. Mr. Andy Gritt, who you've just heard speak, who is heading up Op Courage in the Southwest. Jess, of course, who's looked at things from a family's perspective. And Dr. Justin Havens, who talked to us earlier about the treatment of traumatic stress. So, now we know who they are and what they're experts in. Have we got any questions? Councillor Walsh, over to you. Hang on, there's a mic coming, David. I'm making Jazz earn her keep.
Thank you. Well, firstly, I'd like to say thank you to everyone. The presentations today have been fantastic. Thank you, and I mean that. I've got a question for Mr. Andy Gritt, our last speaker. Still fresh in our minds. Well done. You said that in the Southwest, 10% of prisoners were veterans. I don't actually want you to elaborate on that, but I think we need you to elaborate on that, please.
Okay, I will elaborate on that. It's the percentage of veterans in prison is quite a difficult one, because the records that prisons keep are notoriously bad to interrogate. But within the Southwest, we've done some work on this to just kind of try and find out our populations within the Southwest. And the reason we have a higher percentage of numbers, it's not something that's particularly easy to talk about, is that we have particular units in the Southwest, and there are several units in the Southwest that do a particular job working with sex offenders. And unfortunately, we have a higher representation of veterans within those units than in the rest of the country. Now, I can't interrogate that any further at the moment and look at that, but I do know that one of the things about that is that actually when that group are likely to become discharged, there's less organisations that want to work with them because of the offences, so they're kind of double damned. They have the stigma of being a veteran in prison with those kind of offences, and also when they leave, where do they go to and what kind of support are they going to get? So I hope that answers the question in part anyway.
So I was not paying attention. There's a hand up at the back.
It's for Major Burgess. Is there an opportunity to get involved in mental health services within the Army for like junior ranks, such as myself? I'm a Lance Corporal. I've applied or spoken to the OpSmart people before, and they said they don't normally take people on unless they're full screw or above. Is there an opportunity for more junior people to get involved in something, especially if they've got a passionate approach towards it, such as mental health? Is there a way to get into that you know about?
Yeah, thank you. That's quite a difficult question for me to answer, because I come at this from an outside perspective, if you like, because my day job is the CIS school up in Bovington. I'm not actually in the mental health services. But firstly, mental health first aiding. If you can get on a mental health first aider course, that's a great start. The Army currently doesn't endorse MHFA in service. They've created another course, which is similar to it, but it'd be worth trying to get yourself on that for the first instance. Again, OpSmart, I would keep plugging away at OpSmart. They need people to deliver the training that they're doing across the services, particularly across the Army anyway. And have you ever considered moving into another CAP badge? So maybe looking into the Royal Army Medical Corps, or the RAMC, to see if you could train as a mental health nurse?
Transferring to another unit, actually. It's quite funny you suggest that, but no, yeah, that going down the first aider role, yeah, sounds like a good place to start. So yeah, thank you for that. Cheers.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Gentleman here.
Thank you. Frank Roberts from Swanage. I'd like to add my thanks to you all. I had to do a remembrance meeting this morning, so I've only been here since lunchtime. But I did 25 years in the Army, and I saw this event being advertised on Dorset Council's weekly email last Friday, and I thought, you know what? I've never come on board with something like this, and it's been absolutely fantastic to see what's going on. The one question I did have, which I've now got the answer, is if somebody came up to me, a veteran, and said, I've got this problem, who do I contact? Even though I've been in the Royal British Legion and a chairman of a branch, I wouldn't actually have known where to start. So I think at the moment it's sort of get hold of the Veterans Gateway, and so I've learned a bit about that today. But my question was, where do you start? There's so many different groups and organisations going on. Could you just go through exactly what that gateway is all about and what it does for people? Thank you.
Andy, go on, I'll let you start this one.
Okay. The Gateway is a really good starting point, but you make a good point. There are so many organisations out there. I think at the last count there were over 6,800 charities that were registered to provide support to veterans and their families. So actually negotiating that is quite a difficult one. And I think one of the things that the Gateway is seeking to do is to actually have some kind of fidelity around what those organisations offer. So that there is, and actually through the Armed Forces Covenant program that we've been doing, and getting organisations to sign on to the Armed Forces Covenant, we can actually have a better understanding of the governance that is around all those organisations, because they can be. The quality of what you can get is just vast. The idea of the Gateway is that it actually provides a bit more streamlined way into those organisations and a bit more of a way of negotiating and actually kind of navigating all the different organisations that exist. But certainly within Op Courage, one of the things that we're seeking to do is to work with like-minded organisations to provide levels of support and care so that we actually don't lose people, as I said in my short piece. So again, with Op Courage, the Transition Liaison Service is the first point of contact. But if in crisis, then it's obviously high intensity, and then we would walk alongside and would seek to work very closely with organisations that are keen to work with us and provide that level of support and care. So if in doubt, Gateway. If not, Op Courage.
And I'd add to that as well that I know people are going to say, no, you would say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. In Dorset, you're really, really fortunate to have a great Armed Forces Covenant Programme partnership.
He would say that.
I would say that, but it's true. And if I don't praise what we're doing, no one else is going to. So, no, in all seriousness, we have a great partnership. We've got a lot of people we're in contact with. So I'd say to anybody out there, if you're within Dorset and you're not quite sure who can help or where to turn to, contact us. You can get my contact details through the Dorset Council website. We've got our own Facebook page now. Get in touch. My proud boast normally is I might not immediately know who to talk to, but within 2 phone calls I could normally tell you. So please don't be shy. If you're struggling and you don't know where to go, please use us, contact us. Is what we're there for. Question from the gentleman here. Wait, Mike's just coming to you, sir.
Yeah, so following on that sort of question, there's a sort of stigma still around mental health and actually seeking out that help for yourself. How, this is just an open question to any of you, how do you personally think that we could sort of breach that gap and stop there from being a stigma behind that, if that makes sense?
That's a good question. I'm going to ask Jess to come in on that first, because I think you sort of addressed that a little bit in your conversation we had earlier. So
yeah, I think that reaching out for when you're experiencing mental health problems is beyond scary. It will never get easier with that feeling of the shame or failure if we don't educate people that discussing mental health is normal and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not a failure to yourself, and it is overcoming that barrier, like you say, on actually reaching out is normal to everybody, and more education needs to be taken on that, whether you're military, whether you're just regardless of who you are. But it's about, like an earlier question, it's about knowing where to reach out to, because depending on what you are struggling with, all depends on where you get referred to, who's going to help you. But it is simply just about sharing more resources that are available, because there are, like you say, about over 6,800 support services. But how many of them do we know about? How many of them, like if you were to wake up tomorrow and someone asked you, I don't know where to go, I'm experiencing this, we need to be able to know, okay, which lane do you go down? So yeah, it is just education of people that right now we're not getting, and knowing where the resources are available.
Thank you, Jess. Justin, any additional thoughts on that?
Well, the only thought I'd say is, I think in schools, which is where it starts, because the people at school now are the generations tomorrow, they do a lot of education on mental health, and if anything, they talk, the word anxiety is kind of bandied around in a, not in a flippant way, but it's just normal. It's not, there is no stigma from what I can see. So I think that's probably where it'll change. But things things have changed over the last 20, 30 years anyway, and particularly in the military. It just wasn't a conversation in the past.
Very true. Any other panel members got any thoughts?
I think
Jess?
just adding on for your conversation there, you're completely right that if we look back at, say, World War I and World War II, there was that shell shock. That, okay, you've got shell shock and that's it. You didn't really know what that meant, how you got support for it, but it is becoming more widely discussed. Not enough yet, but as I said earlier when speaking up here, that reaching for help doesn't fade the courage, it actually creates courage. And there is always going to be a slight vulnerability when asking for help, but it is literally just taking that leap.
Can I just come in there, Kev? Because I
Yeah,
think
cool.
it is really important, and the point Justin makes is really interesting. I think it is talked about in schools, but it's not widely talked about enough. And I think we focus very heavily on PTSD when we talk about the veterans communities, and actually that isn't the be-all and end-all. We need to talk about general mental health and well-being and supporting people to stay healthy. And I think it's really important that where we get the opportunities, at any opportunity to talk about mental health opportunities and what might be out there, we take those. Because we all are the greatest advocates. If we're believing in what we're doing, then we should be talking about it. I think the problem is, and Jess has experienced a little bit of this, is when you go forward for help and you take that leap and then it's not reciprocated or somebody lets you down, then people retrench and they go back into their shells and they don't want to speak about it again, so it becomes that much more difficult. But just reaching out and talking to somebody about that, even if it's just an initial conversation with a friend, to just get that dialogue going, I think is really important.
Thanks. And I think the other thing is an observation for me, and I'm going to bring Pat, this is going to quite neatly bring Pat in, I hope. So often when we talk about mental health, we're talking about mental ill health. And we're not actually talking about good mental health. And so this is an absolute cue now for Pat, to bring Pat in to talk about how we actually, before it becomes an issue, promote good health in people.
Yeah, it's a bit off message, I think, sometimes, but I often think that we create, in a way, because everything's a mental health issue, and everyone thinks that's a negative thing, but mental health is exactly what it means. It's health, but it's about holistic health too. It's about us being completely healthy human beings. And what we're sort of discussing here, when we talk about the veterans community, you'll see in the actual forces themselves now that there's a step change. There's a lot more education being done. I mean, mindfulness in the military 10 years ago, not a chance, but it's happening now. OpSmart, mental health awareness briefings, mental resilience training, that's happening in the military now. Certainly in the Army, it's across, and I'm sure it's going to, if it's not already in the other services, it will be in the other services. So it's like a culture that's changing. Schools, as we've just discussed, you'll see that's happening. And then it's not just mental health. Mental health is one small part of this. It's holistic health. It's the healthy, properly functioning human being. And mental health is one small part of it. If we can put all the pieces of the puzzle together and not separate it into one thing, then I think we've got a much better chance of having some success here. And that needs all of the agencies, combining, working together to create a much sort of more healthy human being, as opposed to just focusing on that sort of niche piece of it.
Thanks, Pat. Just looking to see if there's any more questions. If not, I've actually got one, and it's more of an observation and it's for Mark and Stu. But I was watching your presentation earlier, and there was mention of a thing called a Bowra bag. What's a Bowra bag?
Well, right. How to say it? Headley Court Military Hospital. Born in the bag. The toolkit.
So whilst Mark was at Headley Court, I think he mentioned in his presentation the 6-month point was a bit of a step change for him. You know, he found focus with the Invictus Games. What he had actually been doing throughout his throughout his continued recovery pathway was he started to collect small bits of equipment, and they were just kind of thrown in a plastic bag, and they you know. Maybe a physio had steered him towards something. Maybe an occupational therapist had steered him towards something. And a lady, Carol Betteridge from Health for Heroes, came along and said, "Oh, you know, out of interest, Mark, what's that?" And he explained that, and she said, "Oh, Bowra bag." And maybe just to really put answer the question, we've got a small video that'll cover this quite eloquently.
When you're in the situation of having a brain injury, it's really important that right from the start you try and help yourself, because that's actually the first steps to recovery.
There are no clinical guidelines for rehabilitation after stroke. A lot of patients receive absolutely nothing. They receive nothing guidance-wise, so really people don't quite know what to do.
Mark and I met after his brain injury, and we talked about what helped his recovery and the things that he could have had or should have had that would have speeded that recovery up.
The Bowra bag is an idea from Mark. It's small items of equipment that he's collected throughout his 3-year rehabilitation that have enabled him to function on a day-to-day basis.
Whether it's for physiotherapy or occupational therapy uses or for speech and language, the communication aids, I think, at the beginning are absolutely vital for the person who's had the injury and for their family.
Because often people with brain injury can't speak the words, but they can actually write them. People don't want to be dependent on others. They want to be able to feed themselves straight away. And so the Nork is such a simple utensil that actually gives him and other people with brain injury independence. He came up with some bands that he could exercise his limbs himself straight away.
Mark never ceases to amaze me in his power of recovery.
They said it was very unlikely that Mark would walk. He just forced himself, kept trying.
Repetition drives neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is simply the ability of the brain to rewire. The stuff that's inside the Bowra bag will be a good way to target that process.
He doesn't like to take no for an answer, and if someone says he can't do something, then it just makes him try all the harder.
The man has got serious guts. He demonstrates that on an everyday basis. It does take guts, but it also takes know-how.
It's something active that you can do yourself. All the things that are in the bag will help you do that, and it's there in the bag next to you, so you don't have to ask anybody.
You are taking Mark's 3 years of experience from a stroke survivor given to you at day one. And Mark's whole drive is to get this to the patient so as they don't give up hope.
It can be done. Functional rehabilitation can be done. I've seen some amazing progress with patients.
That's the real key message of Bowra Bag. What's inside matters. You can make a difference to your own recovery.
The 100 bags issued out,
I guess what Mark's trying to say is so far we've been able to, all these charities have been able to distribute 100 bags. What's probably particularly applicable to the veteran and military community in the audience his charity, the Barrow Foundation, is also able to secure a very targeted grant from the NHS for £30,000, which will enable him to buy a further 300 bags. But those bags have to be distributed to members of the veteran or serving community. So I know somebody spoke to me earlier today about a friend of theirs who'd had a brain injury. This isn't just about stroke. This is about neurological disorders. So if there is somebody within your family, within your network that has that link to the military, then all you need to do is go on to Mark's website, the Barrow, just type in Barrow Foundation, and on there you can request a Barrow bag. So that they are there, ready to go.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm actually glad I'm asked now. That was good. We would have missed that completely. So thank you. And hats off to Mark and his foundation. So fantastic work. Thank you for that. Any more questions from the floor? Lady here at the front. Mike's just coming.
It's a very quick and straightforward question. Where do we find the presentations today that we didn't manage to get to on YouTube? Do we do a particular search for something?
Oh, now that's put me on the spot now. And I'm desperately looking around the room for Rosanna, and there she is, who I'm hoping will be able to answer that for me.
Hello. We will send around an email after the event to all ticket holders, and it will give you a link to download all the presentations.
And what I will do is once I've got that link, I will make sure it goes up on our Facebook page and is distributed amongst all of our partners and everything as well. So I think between us, we should ensure that it's available to almost everybody. So. Okay, any more questions? I mean, that's one of the nice things about today, actually, is if you've missed a presentation, you can go back and watch it. Or if you saw one that was really good, you can go back and watch it again. How good is that? Question here.
Hello there, my name's Richie. I was quite inspired by the video and seeing Mark there. Just a question for you, Mark. When you had your stroke and you was on the road to recovery, how did you engage with like your family and your friends? Did you go to them or did they come to you? I mean, it's a big question, but.
Well, one thing, I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, I get lost. You know, friends are abandoned. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, many friends, Headley Court. You know, it's a strange thing. You know, it's a. And I mean, my wife and 2 kids, you know, it's good, but it's tricky. I mean, I can't fucking. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I swear, but I
It slipped out.
Yeah.
Slipped out.
Well, you know. A train of thought, but 1, 2, 3, 4 friends of mine, long friends, but loads of friends, officers. No, it's a tricky thing, you know. My person, I mean, it's how to say it.
I thought one of the interesting things Mark spoke about there, and this is really in a question, despite being a really good friend of Mark's, that I feel I've got enough knowledge to answer. But something I find really interesting there is his note about establishing friendship at Headley Court.
Okay.
So and he's clearly and I think that the idea of bringing together serving personnel who are on a recovery in a central place is really, you know, is truly powerful.
Yeah.
Really, really powerful, because he has made he's absolutely made lifelong friends there while they've been on their recovery journey. I mean, some of them, you know, and you guys would know, you know, as Marines, you know, these guys are inspirations. You know, Mark, you know, the Mark Ormrods, the Lee. I mean, him and Lee Spencer were in Headley Court together. You know, imagine it must have been an absolute nightmare for the staff there, you know, trying to deal with them. But it's infectious, isn't it?
It is.
You know, that you know, that determination, and as we try to sort of explain, you know, in the charity, what Mark is really trying to do is bring some of those really, you know, really inspirational people together and share it with the wider community. Because, and I've heard of, you know, I've been in and sat in on a few presentations, and actually sometimes the best way to improve your own mental, and I can speak from experience. I'll sort of, I didn't mention it early on, but I was medically discharged myself with depression, and do you know what? It is cathartic to help somebody else. It's cathartic. It may be hiding it slightly yourself, but I'll tell you what, it done half make a difference. And you know, go and work with other people, because it is fantastic. It's fantastic.
One point, the Southampton, 2 people, and National Health, nurses, and the Poole Hospital, 2 nurses. Myself, the Headley Court is private healthcare, and the nurses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I mean, it's a private healthcare. It is, you know, it's a, yeah. You know, it's a national health. You know, it's good, but yeah.
It's beautiful to share some conversation with you, and seriously, we're going to keep on watching you, see if we can get one of those bowel bags as well. You know, so keep up with the good work, and it's a very inspirational person. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was actually a great question, and I think it's interesting. An observation from me is that in times of trouble, in times when your chips are really down, that's when you discover who your true friends are. And I think any of us who served know that's when your mates rally round when the crap hits the fan, to put it bluntly. And hopefully that's what's happened for Mark. So thank you for the question, and thank you, Mark, for your fantastic answer. So we've got time maybe to take a couple more questions if there are any. Gentleman at the back here, and then the lady in red in the front here.
It seems to me there are 2 things in the military, the way we're sort of brought up, and drill has something to do with that. It's whatever happens around you, march on. And I think you were saying about people march on and leave the dead men behind or the injured men behind. And I've noticed that when things go wrong, this is always a very difficult thing for people to handle. Can the panel sort of talk about that a bit? And obviously, so many people serving and post-service, we learn to hide what's wrong. We march on ourselves.
And I think what we're saying here is that ability of the military to sort of crack on and carry on no matter what is happening around them. I think that's probably to sum up what we're talking about here. So let's go to our serving member of the military first, Pat, and then we'll go around the panel.
I think it sort of comes back a little bit to what I said earlier on about the way that the culture's changed. The culture's changed within the service at the moment. So there's lots of campaigns about it's okay not to be okay and things like that. I personally had a post put on the home headquarters of the Royal Tank Regiment the other day about some mindfulness, a mindfulness initiative that was happening. And the difference between the generations' responses was marked. So the generation of my generation and those newer were absolutely on board and really keen and supportive and could see the strength of it. And there were some that had served previously that were very much I just used to drink a bottle of whiskey and go to bed, and it'd all be gone in the morning. I'd be underneath my duvet, hiding it. So there is a change there is a huge change in the way that we all respond to these things, and it's education, and it is a cultural change, and it does take time. And it just takes people to keep pushing it forward. So I think for the serving community, we're in a much better place than we ever were before. And we're much more aware of mental ill health. We're aware of the sort of health of our soldiers holistically. And we're sort of trying to get the best for them. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you, Pat. I just want to say one thing. Drinking a bottle of whiskey the night before does not cure anything. Because in the morning, the same problems are still there. Also is another bottle of whiskey, and I say that from personal experience. I'm going to hand over now. We're going to go to the other end of the spectrum now, and I'll bring Jess in now to talk about your experiences and answer that question from the family perspective.
Yeah, I think that when trauma does happen, like you say, everyone is very quick to rally round and check that you're okay and offer you the support. However, gradually, less and less people start to check if you're okay. They move on with their lives. And it sounds awful to say, and why shouldn't they, I guess, but at the same time, they move on and as if nothing happened. But you're still there, and you're still left with that trauma. But like you did say, Mark, earlier, you get the people that do stick around, and the people that are there no matter what. And you find more people along the way. Like, due to what happened to you, you probably now know people that you would have never have met if that maybe didn't happen to you. But at the same time, it is great having that small support network around. However, you've got to make sure that those people that are around you, they know how to help you, or actually they have the support that they need in order to help you to stick around. Because when something happens to someone and someone else is supporting them, if it gets hard for that supporting person, they have no obligation to stay. Whereas when you're going through the trauma yourself, it is with you no matter whether you like it or not. So yeah, it's about, like you said earlier, about the education, but also just making sure that you check in on people a bit more, because I think some of us need to do a lot more of that. And maybe you sit there today and you think, I haven't checked on that person for a little while. And it's just finding that balance between ensuring that they're okay, but ensuring that you're okay in the process.
Thanks, Jess. Any additional thoughts from anybody on the panel to add to what's been said?
The only thing I'd say on that was I absolutely agree with what Jess is saying there, and it's very much incumbent on looking after your peers, looking after your friends, but also encouraging people to reach out for help, professional help, when they need to. And we've seen how, in many ways, particularly for the veterans community, there's a lot more help than the media would like to suggest. There's a lot more help out there, and over the years there have been, as we said, 6,800 charities. I heard it was 3,000 a few years ago, so there's even more happening now. But the kind of getting clearer pathways for people to access help, I think, is really important, and it's important to encourage people to get help. I don't know what the stats are now, but in years gone by, it was very much the partners of people suffering who were the ones that instigated kind of getting help, either from a compassionate angle or from if you don't get help now, I'm leaving you, a slightly more dramatic angle. But that's all I would say. But it's been great to be here today, and I'm just noting it. This is called a mental well-being event, which is exactly right. We shouldn't talk about mental illness so much, although it's important. We should talk about mental well-being, and that should be the dialogue.
So I think it's nice to hear from Pat that the military is certainly changing from my days of service, where you were basically just told to man up and crack on. That we're now actually considering the health and well-being of our guys and girls who serve, and that's exactly the way it should be. It's nice to hear from Jess and get the family's perspective, because I think we forget the impact this has on the families. Those of us who served, we do our job, we go to work, we crack on, we get it done, and perhaps we don't always consider the impact of what we do, and what we do or don't bring home sometimes has on our families. So it's good to hear. There was a question from the lady in red here in the front.
Thank you. It's firstly, it's just good to hear that things are changing and how mental illness, well-being is dealt with in the Army. My question is around, or rather, I'm more interested in knowing how issues are dealt with if the current serving men and women were to bring up issues about their mental health, about bullying, etc. Because we often hear about from my patients about bullying that they've experienced in the Army. And I'm just wondering, in today's day and age, do people feel confident to actually come up and speak about what they're experiencing and how that is dealt with?
I'm sorry, Pat. I think we're going to have to direct that one at you again.
Sorry. Yeah, it's me again. You'll get bored of my voice in a minute. Okay, so in answer to your question, in those areas too, so we have things called climate assessments that we conduct in the Army now. I'm a climate assessor. And we have 3 levels of them. Level 1, so if a new commanding officer takes charge of a unit, I'm only speaking on the Army's part, by the way, here. I can't talk of the other services, but I'm sure there's something very similar taking place in the other services. But if a new commander takes over on a unit, within 6 months, they have to have a climate assessment. And that is a level 1 climate assessment where you get a questionnaire and you tick out to say what the lived experience is like for you at that unit. Is there any bullying and harassment? Is there any, have you felt uncomfortable? No, I can see the Marines are going, never seen that. But so that's what happens at climate. And then there's another level of level 2, where you get another option at a higher level where your headquarters, so a brigade, for example, would look down on a unit and say, we're going to go in there. Or if there's a real issue and somebody's gone to a helpline, because we've got lots of mental health helplines, lots of diversity inclusion helplines, lots of other helplines that people can go to as well, Speak Out being one of them. If they contact that helpline and say there's a real problem in my issue, but nobody's got the courage to say it, then the level 3 climate assessment team will go in, which is specialist climate assessors, which will then go in and have that discussion with the unit to try and see what the issues are and what needs resolving. So we've got all of that. Everyone has access to a thing called a service complaint. So if there's something not quite right in your organisation, you can put in a service complaint against the service, and it doesn't matter what rank. There are ways we try to resolve at the lower level. We don't go straight to the top. But you can have a discussion one-on-one. You can speak to a diversity and inclusion advisor, because we have those throughout the force as well. We have, so in answer to your question, we've actually got quite a lot of stuff in place. I had a discussion briefly earlier to talk about defence, and sometimes the way we view service leavers is we're viewed as the victims leaving the service, coming into this big bad world, which is Civvy Street, and that we're unable to cope because we're institutionalised. I'd almost like flip that on its head and say that we come from an organisation where we kind of got each other's backs. We look after each other well. We've got good mental health services. We've got good physical health services. We've got lots of support networks in place. And we might be the example of, as an organisation, of how good it could be. But that's kind of me going off topic slightly. Does that help to answer that question? What did I miss?
In some ways to me.
Okay.
I'm no way connected with the Army. I've only recently joined the Veteran HIS service.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have another part of my job where I'm working with the early intervention psychosis team.
Yeah.
And whilst I hear it quite often about how people in the Army have each other's backs, I also have people who are currently serving who are afraid that they might lose their jobs because if they were to go and report how they're feeling, and if they were to get onto medication, for example, it could cost them their job.
Yeah, and I think rather than sort of cut across and say that's not true, I'd say that's a perceptual issue. So lots of people perceive that by coming forward, as we've already heard, people like actually asking for help, that seems to be the most difficult thing. And they build up a reason why they can't ask for help. And it could almost be their own perception that's stopping them asking for help. So there's a block they've got their own block. I mean, how do you undo that perception? The only way we can bring down that stigma is to hold events like this, is to hold events within our own organisations where we have mental health awareness days, we have lunch and learns, we have lunatics like me going around defence talking about mindfulness. We've got all sorts of these things where we raise this awareness for people and let them know that it's actually okay to come forward, and in like majority of cases, it wouldn't have a career implication unless it was so difficult for the person to continue serving because of the illness that they've got, where they would have to be medically discharged. But the support services are definitely in place.
I'm so glad that Pat referred to his job as talking about mindfulness as lunacy, and it wasn't me who said that. I think picking up on what Pat said, some of the perceptions about what you can and cannot talk about, what you can take to your senior officers and sort of, if you like, have a conversation about is historical. I think there is a perception that you can't do it because actually that was the way it was in the past. And I believe that in talking to the people I know within the military now, that isn't really the case anymore, that you can be far more open and discuss what ails you and get a fair crack at the whip and good treatment. But there is this historical thing that says, oh, if I speak to my CO about that, I'll be out the door and a civvy before I know it. So I think we have to bear in mind that, as Pat said, a lot of it is perceptions rather than perhaps what the actual truth is. Do you think I'm fair in saying that? Yeah. I'm pleased to see there's nodding heads, especially for the Marines over there, which is always reassuring. So I'm ex-Royal Navy, so. So that I think we need to bring our questions to a close. So thank you so much for taking part, for some great questions. Can I ask you all, if you can, give us 5 minutes and stay. We're going to get rid of the panel in the nicest possible way. And then we're going to set a table up on stage, and the Tank Museum are then going to sign the Armed Forces Covenant. So it would be great if you would be good enough to stay behind and just witness that. They are one of the first large military museums to sign the Covenant. It's a big thing to do. It shows their commitment to the armed forces and to all of us who served. So I think it would be great if we could all just stay and witness that signing and say thank you to Tank Museum for showing that commitment, for doing it. So that would be great if you could do that. But before we do that, can we say a big thank you to our panel and for... Right, thank you. So give us a couple of minutes. We'll get a table up here. We'll get the paperwork and we'll do the signing. But thank you all. If you can stay, that'd be brilliant.